Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of VC TV. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. We're going to jump right in. Today, we're talking all about early stage and seed investments from an investor perspective and potentially from a founder or two's perspective as well. What's all happening? Where's money going? Where it's not going? What are some of the troubles or exclusions that we may have to go through in particular industries when raising these first few rounds of our companies? That's what we're going to talk a little bit about. Big shout out to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making today's episode of VCTV possible. With that, I'm your host, Kyle. Let's go ahead and jump right in. David, welcome back to today's show. A little intro and a little background.
Hi, my name is David Schachter. I have a software cannabis company. We are out of Las Vegas, Nevada, and our service is CBD e-commerce platform. So anyone in America can order CBD through our platform. And we have a integration with dropship warehouses. So we help people have their own online CBD store. We handle all the compliance, e-commerce, marketing that goes into that.
Wonderful. Welcome back, Fabio. Same to you. Welcome back. It's a pleasure. A little intro and a little background for everybody.
I am by training an economist. I started my career at the International Monetary Fund. And then I moved to the European Central Bank, Goldman Sachs, and my life took a turn on the exotic side when I moved to the Arabian Peninsula to work for institutions and sovereign wealth funds. My last position there was as a chief strategy officer of the Oman Investment Fund. Now I took a share in a boutique investment bank based in New York. And apart from asset management, we do advise companies, startup, innovative companies to raise capital on the US capital market, in particular the over-the-counter market in New York. So Golden Eagle will be your friend if you want to list on this market.
Wonderful. And Renato, welcome as well. A little intro, a little background for everybody.
Hey, thanks, and cheers to everybody. I believe my colleagues have been on the VCTV before, but I'm with Mensa Capital. We are a boutique investment advisory firm, and we advise on African startups. So any company that has their headquarters in Africa or the majority of their business is taking place in Africa, that's sort of our niche focus. But myself, I've been working on the continent for the past 3-4 years, working in the startup ecosystem from the startup all the way to a growth stage fund. So excited to hear some of the questions today.
Wonderful. I want to start off with my first question for you and tell us a little bit about what's happening around in Africa when it comes to early stage and seed investing. What does the landscape look like in general from your viewpoint, having been there, working with startups and also making investments on the ground?
Yeah, so real good question. I think that there's a few good sources of data that have been coming into play over the past 3 years, and I want to make sure that I highlight those. TechCrunch, of course, Tech Cabal, but there's two in particular sources that I love to quote. Brighter Bridges, which is a friend of mine, Dario Giuliani. He started Brighter Bridges, and they collect data based on startups and fundraising and everything to do with the venture capital ecosystem on the continent. Prior to him, GSMA was doing some small reporting just on mobile and mobility status, connectivity to the internet and whatnot. But Brighter Bridges has taken a very heads-on approach with this. Partech is another one. Partech's an actual investor, but they do put out reports every single year. So you can take a look at either Partech or you could take a look at Brighter Bridges. Either of them have great reports. So in Africa, there is a lot of funding happening, and of course, if you mind 2020 with COVID, where the funding might have scaled down, but the mergers and acquisition expanded quite a bit. you'll see that there's, and depending on the source, of course, where you're getting your numbers, but in 2020 there was $2.4 billion in transactions. There was over $1 billion in disclosed funding, over $1 billion in mergers and acquisitions, and then close to $250 million in undisclosed funding. The majority of these are coming in through some of the major areas. Fintech is one of the top areas on the continent that really takes off. Education and health have been following slowly behind that, and e-commerce has been booming recently. But when we're talking early stage, seed stage in particular, there's been quite a bit of funding from the zero, let's say the $0 to $500,000 range. And there's a lot of things to attribute to that. There's accelerators, seed funds, items like micro traction, which are, first check into a business, 25K type deal. And then that sort of, there's quite a bit of funding there. And then it really narrows down once you get into the $500,000 to $1 million, and then expands back out from $1 million to 5 million, and then slowly gets narrower and narrower, right? So there are some gaps, and the gap largely between pre-seed, seed, and then from seed to growth, there's a massive gap there. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an encompassing picture of what we are doing on the continent in terms of the VC space.
Absolutely. I want to dive a little bit more into fintech and some of those industries. But before we do, Fabio, to you, I mean, on a global scale, what are you seeing happening around early stage and seed investments as a whole? I would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I don't think there is any particular development apart from the fact that with the pandemics, the fundraising has moved from in-person meetings to video calls and conference calls. In general, the opportunities are there. Actually, especially in the US, there is a lot of interest, and there is a lot of money ready to be deployed. Even in Europe, which has been lagging behind, things are slowly improving. But essentially, a big chunk of new ventures has been absorbed by the crypto sphere. So not only cryptocurrencies, but also decentralized finance, non-fungible tokens, various application of blockchain, and so on and so forth. So that is a kind of innovation that has really taken off lately, and that has intensified during the past year in the wake of the success, or if you want to call it the bubble of Bitcoin. Other areas, obviously, another area which has been hot is the pharma, medtech, healthcare, for two reasons. Because of the obvious interest spurred by the pandemics, but also because there was a flurry of investment and innovation that took place over the past, let's say, 5 years, that is really coming to fruition. And now the venture capital community is much more inclined to put a chip in this sector than it was before.
Wonderful. And next, I want to come to you, David, here in just a moment, because I want to hear actually around the cannabis industry. But Ronaldo, coming back to you as you take a drink of water, so apologies, but go ahead and take a drink. I'll slow roll the question for you. But in terms of fintech, Fabio mentioned this is a very popular area, seeing a lot of capital ingesting. We're seeing this on a global scale, but in Africa, you called it out as a very important industry that's seeing a lot of both early and seed stage investment. Why is that in the region, but maybe even on a global scale as a whole, from your perspective?
Well, I think that it's got a lot to do with infrastructure, right? So you're building the technical digital infrastructure for things that we would take advantage of. So, for example, here in Canada, where I'm currently based, simple things like sending money from one person to the next. That's a simple e-transfer. I go into my bank account, I type in somebody's email, the money sends across right away, right? In the States, you have similar things, but not through the banks. It would be through a Venmo or a Cash App type item. In a country like Ghana, you have this infrastructure called mobile money, and you'd be sending money through USSD type payments, right? And that infrastructure needed to have been built. So things like M-Pesa is sort of that infrastructure in East Africa and Kenya, and one of the most recognized across the continent. And then you have, this is just payments within a country. Then you have cross-border payments, right? We look at remittances. There's global leaders such as Chipper Cash, for example, is one of the companies in Africa that's doing a lot of international remittance. And it's not just Ghana to Nigeria, but the UK to Nigeria, the Philippines to Kenya. These international remittances is also a portion of fintech that's been booming. But even if you look at even the more simpler things, getting paid as a business, getting paid from another business, or getting paid from your customers. South Africa has a company called Yoko, where they're giving physical assets for companies to take credit cards with, right? And a company like Flutterwave, for example, Flutterwave just raised 170 million at a $1 billion valuation. It's a de facto unicorn. And Flutterwave has been able to do that over a 3-4 year period. They've been able to spike their valuation at $1 billion. Flutterwave in itself has many other applications. Barter app is one of them, but companies like Interswitch, Visa acquired 20% of in 2019. They're valued over $1 billion as well. And again, these are infrastructure plays for payments to be remitted either from country to country, business to business, consumer to business. These are all things that are, one, very important, but two, never existed up until the last, let's say, 10 years. So it's making room for a lot of other companies to come in and create APIs. Companies like Mono, who just pitched at YC, you have an opportunity to build off of that infrastructure, and I think that's why fintech has been, of course, from the capital of fintech itself in Nigeria. But when you look at a lot of these opportunities, that infrastructure is being built for other companies to build on top of.
Which is a good transition. Thank you, Ronaldo. David, to you. I mean, what do you see in general in early stage, but more particularly, I mean, in the cannabis industry, how is the fundraising environment as an early stage founder? And also, how is it as an early stage founder? I mean, we've talked a little bit about this, you and I, online, offline, about some of the exclusions, some of the, hurdles you've had to go through. What has that process been like from the investment side, trying to raise as a founder?
For the entire industry, we're all more or less startup, whether it's a farm that's been around for a long time that's now going to start growing hemp. You didn't grow hemp last year. You're starting up something new. Funding for the cannabis and the hemp industry has been a big problem, mainly with banking. Actually, Canada, the banking system really kicked off most of the African investments have come from Canada. The Latin American investments have come from the Canadian system because federally it went legal there. The banks were involved. They could send listing on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Being public companies, they were able to raise a lot, and they were able to go in as startups and build a whole new operation in places, including the States. Much of Las Vegas is also owned, operated by Canadian organizations that, for a local startup, somebody who wants to start their own business, whether you're in, Florida or DC, it can be very difficult, the licensing and the compliance. Raising money for it's even harder, getting a loan. So most of it is come from, Kyle, you go through a great list of friends, VCs, private equities, crowdfunding. That's just a fraction of the ones you named. And I don't think it's one. I think that it's kind of a collaboration of a few of them. Mm-hmm. Personally, we are a tech company, and my co-founders, we did a lot of it with sweat equity and built this platform ourselves. And then I went out and tried to sell it and got in, and then we had to raise money to really operate. And that came from friends and family. And then we went to a crowd fund, and now we're still at a more or less pre-seed, being pre-revenue. For the physical locations, for the farms, for the areas, it's a little easier to say, okay, I need a building this size, we're going to have this many plants, this is going to be the yield. You can kind of calculate that. For the tech companies, we're scalable in the sense that we can have the platform in other languages, we can work in other countries, where the cannabis licensing, you're limited to a locality. The Canadian companies work in Canada, the American companies only work in each state. So the tech companies, I think, have a little easier, they have more potential, and it's easier to raise money for us because we can be in multiple states and still operate just as we are.
Now, this is a good point, and actually a question I want to open up to the entire group. I mean, as an early stage investor and founder, but as an early stage investor, what advice do you have for companies here in 2021 and looking ahead, as the fundraising landscape has opened up by a magnitude over the last 18 months? There's more ways to raise capital. There's more capital available. Both accredited and non-accredited investors can invest more than they ever have been. We were talking earlier today on VCTV about SPACs, additional exchanges and IEOs, and so many different, again, options. What advice do you have for those entrepreneurs that are thinking about raising their first or second round, either in a particular or in all industries? And Fabio, let's start with you. You unmuted first, so I'm coming to you.
Raising money, it's never easy. No matter how much money is available, supply is always overwhelmed by demand. Now, essentially, you have to be able to convince people that your idea, your business plan, your innovation is worth financing. The best way, the easiest way is if you have done in the past, in your previous life, something similar, you've been successful, therefore you want to bring that experience to fruition. That's the easiest way to convince somebody that you'll be able to do something when you have already done it. If you are not in that position, you need to convince people, convince the potential venture capitalist that you have not only the technical competencies, the research capabilities, but that you are always very good in marketing your product, your innovation, your device, your application, your idea. Most people downplay this element. They think that once you have something that works, that is great, By the way, I have I hear something in the background, a noise in the background. I'm not sure if you hear it too. It might be a bit annoying for the audience.
It's all good. I fixed it. You're good.
Okay. So the what I was trying to say is that most people believe erroneously that a great innovation, a great product, a great idea will sell itself. That is not true. So you better take care not only of the production part, not only of the actual delivery of your product or application. You need to be able to convince the investor of your marketing and selling skills.
No, that's a very, very, very good point. I mean, you've got to sell the story. You've got to share your vision. But David, go ahead, and then Ronaldo, I'm going to come to you next. David, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not just raising capital. You also have to build a team, and you have to be able to convince your team of your vision. As CEO, I think I've brought on a great team, my general manager, our marketing, our advisor group, and that helps really build the momentum that before anybody gives us money, who are you, what do you do, what was your past experience? And part of that was building this team. It was a great idea. If it's not marketed, if it's not put in the right place, nobody hears about it, nobody sees it. So it's not that great if nobody cares. And I think a big success we've had in the last year or two is making the team. So when you're building, don't just think it's all about money. Sometimes it's about gaining followers. Sometimes it's about gaining users. If you've been live and you're not making money, but you now have 1 million users in your network, that's huge. There's other forms of milestones that you can reach besides raising money. And then say, hey, look how much revenue we're doing. Look how much media retention we're getting. Then it's easier for somebody to support you, to show that, there's other ways of gaining traction, which will lead to more investment. Because essentially you need the investment to keep going, but it's not the one all be all. There's other forms of currency, we can call it.
Right. Well, it's not one-stop shop, right? Just because you get investment doesn't mean the game is over. You've got to continue to build, to your point, you got to continue to build a company. You've got to sell a product or service and continue to grow. And you need that team and that support, as we talked about earlier on VCTV today. You need that support system around you. Individuals that are going to support not just you as the founder and CEO and your team, but also the company as a whole. So you're calling out a great thing, a reminder to companies as well, David. Thank you. Renato, to you, same question.
Yeah, I think one of the broader themes that was mentioned is execution. If you can execute, you prove feasibility, people will be interested. And then at that point, it's just finding who's most interested in that space. Investment officers will have different mandates given from their, as a GP, given from their LPs, and those will change. Those will change as time progresses. And that's nothing that you can control, but again, I think execution might be one of the most important things. And when pitching, which is obviously a different thing, if you garner the execution and then the aid on the actual pitching itself, simply know your business. If you know your business, that means you know your customers, you know their pain points, you know your market, and you need to know that like the back of your hand. And everything from understanding your margins, understanding your revenue streams, understanding how things are moving within your company. Also understanding your raise, what the raise is being used for, what that runway is going to get you, different scenarios for your burn rate. These are things that are definitely important. Especially considering when you're working in an international realm, especially considering the fact that these GPs will have mandates from their LPs. So a certain amount of dollars needs to go in a certain geography or a certain type of business or whatever the case may be. As a startup, you definitely need to be able to have that on a granular level. And even if it is a projection, have that on a granular level, understand your business and be able to tell that story.
Absolutely. Thank you both. And I want to come around for closing thoughts as we're close to the top of the hour. So David, first to you, closing thoughts, anything else people should know about early stage and seed investment, along with the cannabis industry? And then, of course, where can they find you and the company to continue the conversation as well?
Yeah, if anyone's interested in investing in cannabis, 2 thumbs up, do it. It's coming. It's not going away. New York just legalized, New Mexico, Texas eventually will, and it's not just cannabis that's medical and recreational for adults to consume. There's also hemp, which can really help the planet with plastics, and it's going to be a really a major crop for North America, for Latin America, for Europe, for Africa. So if anyone's interested in cannabis, go for it. I can be reached at David Schachter at LinkedIn. My company's Cannabis Scope. And I'm happy to talk to anybody and encourage them to please get involved with us.
Very, very good. Thank you very much, David. Renato, to you, closing thoughts, and then, of course, where can everyone find you and your fund if they would look to connect afterwards?
Yeah, closing thoughts, I guess, keep your connections wide open. Have those conversations, be involved in your ecosystem. I understand, fundraising and the community aspect takes away from what you're supposed to be doing is building, but just recognize that it's important. And yeah, if you want to reach out to me, Twitter might be one of the better avenues. You can find me 92 Rossi on Twitter, and yeah, don't feel ashamed or afraid to reach out. We're here to answer questions and help where we can.
That's great advice. I mean, again, as early stage investors, we're always here to listen, to talk, to give advice as well, and build those relationships, as Renato says. So don't fear to reach out. We're all here. Fabio, closing thought, where can you be found online for those looking to connect with you afterwards? Nope, looks like we may have lost Fabio, but do check. Fabio, are you there? Nope, looks like we may have lost him. So definitely check out Fabio.
You Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter, with my last, it's quite unique. So if you Google my last name in any search engine, you'll find me. In any case, also, if you send an email to info@Golden Eagle, which is jca-us.com, GCA-us.com. I will read it. And please feel free to contact me. I will be most likely, I will most likely be able to give you some advice, in some cases also some help.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much for sharing your thoughts and insights today around early stage and seed investments, along with some of the surrounding industries that are seeing a lot of activity as well. And to your audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard, make sure you click like and share the episode today. Check out the archive on LATOKEN.com to hear from today's speakers and all speakers of the VCTV family. I'm your host, Kyle Ellicott. A big thank you to the LATOKEN team and to Maria for making today's episode possible. Make sure to reach out to all of the investors today. Make sure to add context, where you heard us, where you met us, and what you would like to continue the conversation about. And with that, we'll be taking a little bit of a break, and we'll be back here tomorrow with more VCTV. Everyone have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you. All the best to everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thanks,
Have a great
Kyle.
day.